Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Not Content Podcast here on our podcast channel from the Q. I am so excited to be returning to doing these YouTube exclusives. We did it for X-Men 97 in the spirit of Batman the Animated Series. We're not good. It's not quite a sequel. It's not quite a follow-up, but it feels like a spiritual successor in so many ways. We are going to be discussing the first two episodes of Batman the Caped Crusader. Now, Amazon did a funny thing. And it's funny that it's on Amazon and not HBO Max, because you would think that the corporate partner would want all their Batman stuff in the same place. But here we are. We have Amazon putting out all 10 episodes at the same time. There are some heavy names behind this, including J.J. Abrams, of course. Thankfully, has nothing to do with the creative direction. Matt Reeves is listed as an executive producer. He, of course, directed the very successful Batman movie that came out 2 years ago. And perhaps most relevant for this show, Bruce Timm, of course, one of the minds behind Batman the Animated Series, is one of the producers as well, along with a wide range of writers and directors. And I think that we felt that this was worth discussing, at least the first two episodes, because we, of course, are huge fans of Batman the Animated Series and even some of the successor shows, including the Justice League television shows, not to mention the various animated Batman movies that have come out over the years. This movie, or this show, I should say, is very not connected to any other mythology that we know of in terms of Batman, but of course it has many of the same visual cues as the animated series, but it is very much doing its own thing, just in terms of the casting choices. But I do have to say that as we get into this, we will only be discussing the first two episodes. We will not be discussing any episodes thereafter. Brian and I, we will be doing 5 YouTube exclusives where we discuss 2 episodes apiece, and we will not watch ahead. So you will only get our thoughts on the first 2 episodes, and we have not watched any future ones at all. So, Brian, coming into this, I'm very curious to know what were your expectations for the show, given the people behind it, given the kind of statement that this is not Batman the Animated Series, but in so many ways it will share a lot of the visual style. And how do you feel the show lived up to what Bruce Timm and Matt Reeves have done in the past?
Yeah, this was a cool, like, Earth 2 kind of perspective. Like, if you imagine Batman the Animated Series is like Earth 1, this would be like Earth 2, kind of the same kind of vibe, same kind of look, same kind of 40s style. There's no cell phones. Everything's got that vintage look to it, kind of almost exactly like the animated series. Not exactly 100% like it, but it's kind of giving it its own style as well. I think the animation style is really good. I'm waiting for an episode to blow me away. We're not quite there yet. It's almost like a homage to the animated series style, but I kind of want to see it have its own kind of flair to it. But I'm only 2 episodes in. We decided to slow burn this one. Originally, I was going to go blast right through this, like I said, but after the first episode, there was a lot to take in, and I felt like it would be kind of a disservice to kind of brush right through this, because just based on episode 1 alone, there's a lot going on and a lot of kind of retelling and reshaping some old school characters for the new kind of school. Right off the bat, I know this kind of sounds ridiculous, but the fact that Alfred got fat just blew me away, because I don't know if it's the first time they did that. I don't know if it's in the comics or whatever, into some different Earth, but a fat Alfred really threw me off, considering he's supposed to be this, like, former British spy, possibly, you know what I'm saying? Like, a questionable spy kind of past. That's always been Alfred's gimmick. And they made him overweight, so I'm kind of curious as what they're going to do with that. I don't know if they're going to poke fun of it. I don't know if he's going to kick ass with all the weight on, which would be an awesome scene.
Here's what I'm going to say. I have a specific response. If you look at Detective Montoya's body type as well, I think, and I would love to see what the room looks like just in terms of diversity, but I definitely noticed that there are various body types in this show that I think is a huge positive. And not just, again, Montoya is definitely drawn to be curvier than a lot of women are typically in animated shows. As you mentioned, Alfred is definitely festively plump as well. And I think that is a very positive reputation to have characters that are drawn to be overweight, but yet still be productive, because it feels like shows and movies have gotten over a lot of, getting away from being homophobic and whatnot, but making fun of overweight people is still okay. And this was a positive side in my view.
Hopefully they become like Sammo Hung, where he gets a really cool action sequence with all the weight on, but looks cool visually. So maybe that's what they're going for. Who knows? But it is cool. It's a cool variety. But at least Bullock is still Bullock. You know what I'm saying? And he's voiced by John DiMaggio, who's famous for Bender and whatnot. So I think that was a great casting right there. Because if you say like I'm gonna put John DiMaggio in a Batman series, immediately I think, oh, he should play Bullock. Like that's the first character I think of for him to play, and that's exactly what he plays here, and he's good at it. He's hardly in it so far in these first 2 episodes, but just hearing that John DiMaggio voice, and it's like, oh, that sound of Bender just rings in your ear. So that was kind of cool. Spoiler: Diedrich Bader as Harvey Dent is like a really crazy casting to me, all things considering he was the Batman from the Batman the Brave and the Bold series. I like this casting a lot because it's like what Robert Downey Jr. just did in terms of playing a different character. Not the same universe, so to speak, but this is like an alternate Bat universe, obviously, but still, like, I don't know how that kind of casting came together. I don't know if it was, Diedrich's idea, but man, it's like, it's weird because when you hear his voice, it's like, oh, that's Batman Brave and the Bold. But in this case, it's like he's more sly. He's more kind of like, you don't really trust the guy the way he sounds. It's great.
I mean, he's a sleazy politician. That's essentially what he is. He is running for mayor, kind of just as he was in The Dark Knight. But unlike The Dark Knight, where he is virtuous and potentially seen as a replacement for Batman, in this case, he is just slightly less corrupt, perhaps, than the cops, many of the cops that exist. So it's definitely a different interpretation of the character. And that's the thing that I appreciate so much, is that you are getting these different interpretations of various characters. Most prominently, I would say, is the Penguin. And I am sure that all the wrong people, or depending on your interpretation, all the right people are going to be angry about the fact that they have made the Penguin a female, as played wonderfully by Minnie Driver. This might be my favorite casting choice of all of them thus in the first 2 episodes. Casting her as Penguin is a stroke of genius. Minnie Driver plays this kind of manic character extremely well, and I think she's kind of underrated. She was in Good Will Hunting, but I don't know that she has kind of had the career that I would have expected, because every time I see her, it's a delight in anything that she is in, and I think she excels in this role as Oswalda Cobblepot, the Penguin. So yeah, big fan of Minnie Driver.
Very kind of shocking, considering that, spoiler alert, we're going to spoil some stuff here and there. I mean, she kills one of her children, right? Adult, he's an adult, I guess.
Voiced by Paul Scheer, voicing both of the children, I want to point out.
Okay, that makes sense, because I was like, who's the other one? Because he died really quick, and then the other one was obviously Paul Scheer. But man, I don't know if Penguin actually did that in the comics. If he did, or he didn't, I don't know. It feels like this is more extreme Penguin, even though she's a woman and it's a change and everything, but it just shows you how ruthless she is, because I don't remember Penguin killing like someone that close to him like that on a whim. And it's probably not really her son, to be honest. It's probably like, picked from a farm or something, and she just,
I mean, I don't even know how much it's ultimately going to matter, but the way that I see her character is that I think she's just written to be a much more vicious Penguin character than we've seen in a lot of other versions. I mean, the Penguin is, it's tough, because I think the Penguin is in so many ways very much associated with the mob, and I don't think that she or he has ever been that aggressive. It feels like they would have other people kind of do their dirty work, and in this case, it's just very blatant. And you mentioned Diedrich Bader playing Batman and Brave and the Bold. I also want to point out that he was Batman. He's Batman in Harley Quinn as well. He made an appearance in the sequel to Shazam, so he definitely has a lot of DC bona fides. Just a couple. We have to talk about Hamish Linklater as Bruce Wayne and Batman. To me, I associate Linklater in a number of projects, most prominently Midnight Mass. Brian, have you ever seen Midnight Mass?
No, but I had it spoiled for me, so I'm kind of waiting. Maybe because last year I watched House of Usher, so that was kind of like my Halloween series to watch on Netflix. I think that's going to be my Halloween series to watch next October. It's only what 8 episodes, right? And
It's
I got the
it's really
I
freaking
got the
good.
spoiler already, but it's all about the
That's
journey to
really
the reveal.
unfortunate. It might be my favorite Flanagan Netflix series. It's either that or the first season of the House on Haunted Hill. Definitely. I mean,
But he
Midnight
plays the
Mass.
preacher, right? As I recall from the clip.
He is the
Yeah,
preacher. Yes.
yeah.
But he's very good. He's a very good actor, of course. And here, I mean, we talk about, to me, the difference between X-Men 97 and Batman Cave Crusader is X-Men 97 has this clear thesis of we are a direct sequel to X-Men 97. We are going to try to recapture all of the feelings. We're going to get as many of the voices as we can. We're going to try to mimic the animation style. And we are going to take what has already been done in the animated series and do a continuation, except we're going to make it slightly more adult, a lot sexier, and I think it really works out. This show doesn't come out as confidently. You watch that first episode, and it's a little unsure of itself, and I think it is best represented in Linklater's performance as Bruce Wayne and Batman because, in so many ways, it feels like he is trying to channel Kevin Conroy, clearly differentiating the Batman and the Bruce Wayne voices, sounding very similar. And I don't know if this is a conscious choice on his part or whether this is something that Bruce Timm is asking of him in terms of the casting and why in this role in the first place. But I don't dislike the role. I don't dislike what he's doing necessarily, but I'm hopeful that by the end of the series, I feel like this is Linklater doing Batman and not Linklater impersonating Kevin Conroy doing Batman.
I think we need like a long speech from him to kind of nail down the voice. It kind of feels like these first 2 episodes he's kind of discovering himself in terms of what he's supposed to be as Batman and what he's supposed to sound like as Bruce Wayne. I do like the fact they're trying to do like the billionaire playboy gimmick side of Bruce Wayne. They really didn't do that in too much in the animated series. They kind of made Bruce Wayne the straight-laced kind of guy. When I much prefer the Christian Bale style, where it's like he tries to play an aloof, not an aloof, but like a guy that's not really like paying attention much. And this guy can't be Bruce Wayne. He's so into his own self, narcissistic kind of thing. So I'm glad they're taking that approach. And the joke with him jumping off the boat and swimming and all that kind of thing, he repeats the joke twice to make it seem like he's a billionaire playboy kind of idiot kind of thing. So I like that kind of twist to it. I hope they play more into that because that way, sometimes in the animated series, it was almost like, God, it's so obvious that Bruce Wayne is Batman, right? I think they're kind of getting away from that and trying to do that differentiation or just to differentiate
Well,
between the two.
this is written for an older audience too. I mean, it is TV 14. It is not an R rating. It's not like we're getting a bunch of F bombs. We're not getting a lot of violent. I mean, it is violent, but it's not like there's not a ton of blood. So I think they're definitely going for an older audience, but I don't think they're willing to go as far. And when you do a TV 14, I think you can push the envelope with Bruce Wayne being a playboy more than on the animated series. And like I said, I've always given Kevin Conroy a ton of credit for still being able to differentiate the character as well as he does. But in terms of the interpretation, I actually prefer this one because he is going for the playboy and he is still able to kind of do his detective thing when he is in when he's in an interrogation room in episode 2 with Montoya, and he's kind of playing coy and basically trying to find out if she's corrupt by bribing her. And that's something that I don't think we've seen a lot from Bruce Wayne, like straight up try to bribe a police officer. But I think it's a really effective scene just in terms of showing us who Bruce Wayne is, but also Batman, trying to crack who is corrupt and who isn't in the police force. And it is worth noting we don't get a lot of Commissioner Gordon. Really, the police person that Batman interacts with the most is Montoya.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I like the change of pace. They did again make Gordon a person of color, so Barbara Gordon also a person of color, obviously. So that's kind of cool. And you mentioned kind of how with the change in Harley Quinn making her Asian, it's like it's this 1940s era where I guess they solve racism, as Jerome says. But It's fine. I'm cool with it. It's, switching out races and roles is not my kind of, I'm not going to complain about it usually, unless it's like kind of offensive. But in this case, it's fine. Um, but we'll see. Because again, this is the first two episodes. They're laying the groundwork. I felt like in this episode we were mainly focused more on Penguin and Oswaldo, I should say. Um, it's kind of like this thing where it's like they're almost doing like the Italian mob versus like that UK kind of mob kind of thing, because she's obviously, has that kind of like UK kind of accent, and she doesn't really slip the accent. She does sound kind of like she's from the UK. Cobblepot is, kind of a name you would believe that comes from like London or something. So I'm really interested in that, because I wonder if they're going to do like that clash of like Italians versus English kind of like mafia kind of thing, which is another take that they really haven't done. Because if you look at the history of like the mob in Gotham, it's always usually, the Italian mob, and they never really kind of differentiate from that. It's always that, but there's always, there's different cultures and different mobs that have come to town, so to speak. So I'm really interested in that, because it's way different than the Nolan one, where everything was just Italian mobs. And if you notice that, and they even carried it into the Batman. So it's a nice change of pace on that end. But in terms of this episode, this was a solid start. Just kind of shocking, because like I would never expect the Penguin character to kill their own kid like that. And like I said, probably not really her own kid by blood, but still, just very shocking. I give the first episode like a 7 out of 10. It's a solid start. I think it's building up to a lot, and I think it's going to build up to a big finish at the end. I think Montoya's going to find out that he's Batman, but I'm not entirely sure about that, because it's usually a blonde that sneaks in. So we'll see how that goes, but it seems like they're setting that up for her to find out, unlike the last episode, as like the cliffhanger.
Yeah, it would seem to me like a lot of episodes are going to be focused on the mob storyline, and hopefully it develops well. Again, this is something that we've seen with the Nolan movies. We've seen it in the Batman, so this is well tried territory. I really hope that they can find a way to kind of bring in those new elements. The second episode is really good. It's very much Batman as the detective. In this case, he is investigating a series of potential murders going on in Gotham. The thing that I love so much about this episode is not only the mystery component, but just the way that the animation is, the different interpretation of Clayface. Like in the past, Clayface, it's been, I mean, of course, Batman the Animated Series, it's going to be kind of more cartoony. But in this case, it's really just Clayface can move his face around. At least that's the impression that I get. It's more about his face than, contorting his entire body. But I really like the mystery element, the big reveal of Clayface, kind of the final battle, and Bullock just being the most corrupt, lazy cop in the world, and being the reason that Batman is ultimately able to escape Montoya's clutches. Just a well executed episode, and I think it kind of establishes some fresh takes again on the Clayface character, establishing Montoya as well. Not a lot of Batman, as you have pointed out, but I think the episode is very good at not only further establishing things, but also lasting on its own as an episode that tells a complete story.
Yeah, total standalone episode for sure, and that's why I like this episode a lot. It feels like Hammer horror, and you know that I'm a big fan of Hammer horror, but this feels like a modern take to it, where it's almost like a Ty West comes in to kind of like reignite the genre, do a kind of like a classic homage to the genre, but also make it new. And this is kind of what that was, where it's kind of like it takes you on this journey. There's hardly Batman in it at first. It's mainly through Montoya's the kind of detective work. Um, but it slowly reveals that Clayface obviously is the killer, but just like the homages to classic Hollywood and classic horror, even the names. So his name is Basil Carlo, and of course you get Basil from Basil Rathbone, who played um, Sherlock Holmes in the early like 50s, I think. And then of course he's got this look where he kind of looks like a mix of like classic movie actors. So it's got a little bit of everything, a little bit of Christopher Lee, that kind of thing. So I dig the character a lot, obviously, kind of paying that homage to all those classic horror stars. And then of course, it's very similar to the animated series storyline, I believe, kind of similar to that. But I like how it's just the face. I've always kind of been weird about Clayface when it's like this whole body. Because it just gets to a little like too weird sci-fi body horror kind of thing when I think it should just be like focusing on the face and the mask and that kind of thing. I think it becomes more simpler, and the way they did it is it's a good setup because you think like, oh, he dies halfway through, spoiler alert, but obviously he just molded the face on the body to look like someone else, which is a total like Vincent Price type move, you know what I'm saying? So that was great. I really dig this character a lot, and like I said, it's hardly any Batman, but he comes in at the end to save the day. Obviously, Clayface does get away, so that's the classic, superhero villain type relationship they're going to have. So that's a good kind of origin story for Clayface, and it fits the timeline because this is what classic '40s kind of vibe. So that fits what this kind of era was. We're not at Hammer horror yet, but this is more like Universal horror kind of era. So that was really cool to kind of put that in perspective. And then you look at it, the way they set it up, it's like, oh yeah, this guy's probably like in the Universal horror kind of like role. So yeah, it was a really good casting. Um, the guy is not like a really popular guy, but he makes him sound like he's a really classic, like trained actor. His name is Dan Donahue. He's done some like video game work and stuff, but I got to shout him out because he did a really good job as Clayface and Basil. So that was good. Yeah, it's a standalone episode, it feels like. And I feel like you could switch the order if you want to kind of ease into the show. Because that first episode is kind of like there's a lot to take in with all the changes and stuff and what's going on with the mob. And you might have to make some notes and take some notes for future references. But in this case, this episode is like you can just sit right in, enjoy it for what it is, and kind of like enjoy the ride and not have to think about it too much. Where in episode one, it's like a lot to take in.
For sure. So we will be doing this for the next 5 weeks. We are going to review 2 episodes apiece. We are going to kind of, we're going to savor these episodes. We're not going to kind of do a binge watch and talk about the whole season. We're really going to break down each episode and kind of give them the attention that they deserve because it feels like this show will have an overarching story, but it is also very much going to be telling their individual stories as well. And that's, I think, what we want. I think that's ultimately what I want is that I want each episode to stand on its own, but I do want them to keep telling an overall story as well. So I think the show is off to a good start. Again, I think X-Men 97 just came out of the gates with 2 really outstanding episodes. And I think it's almost unfair to compare this to X-Men 97 for that reason, especially because this is also a binge watch and there isn't as great of a hype, it feels like, for X-Men 97. They're not playing into the nostalgia as much in show. But like X-Men 97, I think this is designed for an older audience. And I also feel like they're going for the same vibes, I think. And we'll see how it goes these next few weeks. I am very excited to continue on. We will, of course, be introduced to other members of the Rogues Gallery, and we will see what adaptations are made for this series. Please also make sure that you are checking out, in addition to what we do here on YouTube, we are doing podcast episodes. We are covering different baseball movies. This entire summer, we have been focusing a lot on different anniversaries. Most recently, we have covered Dr. Strangelove. We also covered The Sandlot. Next week, we will be covering Jim Carrey, an entire month of Jim Carrey, which I'm very, very excited for. And we will be talking about Man on the Moon first, and then we will go to his legendary 1994, and we will kind of end by talking about Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. Brian, anything else before we exit out of here?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to episode 3 a lot because it's Catwoman, and the voice of Catwoman is Christina Ricci, which is
it's pretty brilliant. It's actually surprising.
Right.
It is actually surprising. This is the first time that I'm surprised this is the first time she's played Catwoman.
Yeah, she just man, especially right now at her age and the way she's had these like Emmy-nominated performances on like Yellow Jackets and shit like that. Like this feels like she's on her big comeback. Not big comeback, but relevant comeback. And I think this is a great casting for her. So I'm really excited for that.
All right, for Brian, I'm Jerome. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. Please, again, check us out on YouTube and continue to subscribe to us on Apple, Spotify, and all of your favorite podcast apps.